All right. Well, keep thinking about questions you guys want to ask us, but we have our first question. Um, the first question was, does it matter to people that it's not a house of God? So I think that kind of goes back to the video in the mall. And I think it's really interesting. Like most people that practice Catholicism really traditionally really like to go to like a church. But I guess that kind of says that like people not necessarily becoming more casual about it, but are finding different ways to kind of practice Catholicism. You kind of see how in the US churches are kind of evolving to be less traditional, and you can kind of like have a church and like outside or have like bands playing. So I think the same thing's kind of true in Colombia. You're kind of seeing like kind of evolve. And even I guess the most important thing is like you're actually like practicing the mass and like being with your community rather than necessarily like where you're practicing like the mass.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think it would be more common to see this maybe in urban areas where there are a lot more people. I mean, people are on the go and very busy and things like that. So it might be more convenient for them instead of having to take time, or maybe in rural communities. It might be just like a whole day thing that you go to church with your family and then you eat after, and it's a very traditional thing like that as well.
So, what are some of the typical foods you might eat throughout the day?
Typical foods.
All right. So our next question is, what are some typical foods you might eat throughout the day?
So a lot of people in Colombia for breakfast have something called arepas.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of like a grilled like flour corn cake type of thing that a lot of people typically eat with eggs or different things like that, and it's a staple that you'll see lots of people making it in the morning as well.
You can have like chorizo with that, which is like sausage. You can have like a drink called agua panela, which is like a sugarcane kind of tea thing, which is really good. Colombians love coffee. It's like the coffee capital of, I want to say the world, but definitely South America. Coffee is a huge export, and a lot of people drink coffee there. During the day, you can have, I would say there's a lot of like meat in a Colombian diet. Like you have a lot of like chicken and beef and pork and stuff like that. You can have it with rice. Like rice is a huge staple of that. Plátanos, which are plantains, those can be grilled or like kind of made in a bunch of different ways. That's really good. Corn is really big.
And then also in the wintertime, there's lots of different soups that are really popular as well. There's one called ajiaco that's typically made during the winter time that has like chicken. It's a potato-based soup and has chicken and lots of other spices and stuff like that, which is really good.
Yeah, there's a soup called sancocho, which is like, I think it's like chicken broth, and you put like corn and a bunch of vegetables and like just like chicken bones, and kind of let that simmer in there. And a lot of people like that.
Sure.
What is the name of the currency?
So the currency in Colombia is called the peso. And it could be a little bit surprising if you go and visit at first and you see some of the prices because things maybe like a soda can or something like that will be like 2,500 pesos, and you might think, wow, that's a lot of money. But the way the currency exchange is set up is a lot different. So it transfers back very differently.
Yeah, a lot of pesos are worth just like $1. So that's the way things work. So prices there might seem really high, but it's not. It's not the same as like dollars.
Do you guys know that?
I looked at it. So the population in Colombia is around 47.12 million.
A lot of people.
Yes.
Do you think Catholicism will be as strong in 10 years?
I would like to say that I feel like in a country like Colombia, which is not necessarily as like modernized as like the United States or like maybe European countries, I think Catholicism will always have a really strong presence. And I feel like especially in like rural communities, it'll always be like a really big component of society there. But you can kind of start to see like in the bigger cities like Cali, Bogota, like the cities that are coming, that like if you go there, they look like New York and American cities. I would say there Catholicism will probably kind of evolve and maybe not be as strong of a presence like we've seen in like the United States. I feel like the more urban things get, you can kind of see religion start to play a smaller role.
Do you think that people who practice minority religions in Colombia are attacked for their beliefs?
That's an interesting question. I think kind of as we've touched on earlier that I think younger people would be more willing to accept people from other religions and maybe hear them out and see what's different about their religion than Catholicism and things like that. But I think a lot of the older generation is definitely more traditional and may not really understand or have the capacity to understand other religions, or they may have heard stereotypes about other religions that maybe aren't true, that maybe still inhibit the way that they think about those religions as well.
And did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like even though they are the minority religions, and we kind of touched upon there was some legal conflict back in the day, I feel like as a whole, like most Colombians are pretty accepting and like want to like know more about other religions. And I feel like I would say it's more of an open place for other religions than like maybe even here in like some parts of like Europe. I feel like there's definitely like, I feel like be very rare to see someone get attacked for their religion, like verbally or physically. And I feel like there's more openness there.
And
How many churches are there?
or you can talk about schools. Are schools similar to yours?
Yeah. Again, so our next question is: are schools there similar to in the U.S.? And I would say to a general degree they are. Like there's definitely like elementary school, and then like some form of middle school, and then a high school, and then there's a college. And then you'll definitely see like in like urban cities, like the big ones. You can definitely see like schools there will look just like schools here. Like they're very modern and have technology and do stuff like that. But in rural communities, I guess I would see that they're very different from what you'd see here.
I would also add that I think there would be more Catholic schools there than maybe you would find in the US. And there's also a lot more prevalence of boarding schools there. My mom and all of her brothers went to boarding school in Colombia as well. So that's something that maybe not as many people here are used to. But I think there's definitely more Catholic schools there than there are here. Did Colombia go through a 90s age?
That's a funny one.
Different clothes?
Yeah, so some different sports. One of the biggest sports is soccer.
Football.
Yes, or called football. And so that's really big. And they were recently, I think last year, in some big championship. I don't really follow sports, but it's definitely a big part.
Yeah, Colombia won, I believe, 8 gold medals during the Olympics, and I can't remember right now what they are in, but they definitely play like a lot of sports. They play like baseball, soccer. Sure, they play like American football at times, but soccer is definitely the big one. A question like was just asked like, what like type of clothes do they have, and how is that similar to us? So you'll see a lot of like in like the malls, like in like the big cities, you'll see people wearing a lot of brands that we wear, like Nike, Adidas, Puma. There's just like a lot of brands that have a really big international presence, like really big brands, and you can see that in Colombia. Like a lot of people will kind of wear that. But I would say when I went to Colombia, I noticed that like fashion styles were like a little bit behind, like a few years behind, just because it takes a while for them to see like what we're wearing. So like I would say like fashion trends are a little delayed, but for as a whole in big cities, you can kind of see a lot of stuff. But in smaller communities, people definitely wear more traditional like things, like less t-shirts and shorts and more, I guess, traditional garments.
Do you have a cookout in Colombia? Unfortunately, there is no cookout in Colombia. I think that's something that maybe you would only find in North Carolina and other parts in the South. But there are lots of, especially in Bogota, in the capital, there's lots of good like street food and really good restaurants around as well. And I know someone mentioned if we eat yuca, and yes, fried yuca is one of my favorite foods as well. So definitely that is prevalent in there.
Yeah, people were asking about like the government in Colombia. So they do have a president. His name is Juan Manuel Santos. So I personally don't know a lot about him, but they do kind of have like, kind of like we have like Democratic and Republican parties. They have their own parties there that kind of manage things. And I would say as a whole, like their government's kind of similar to ours, kind of structure and stuff.
Yeah, and kind of talking a little bit more about government, recently there's been a lot of talk of Colombia in the international news due to a peace negotiation that was brokered by President Santos with the FARC, which is like a revolutionary army that's very prevalent in Colombia, and it's one of the longest civil wars that's been going on in the South American continent. And so peace negotiations are still underway for that. And so that's maybe something if you want to follow to keep looking for that as well.
Cool. So I'm gonna ask what kind of pets you're allowed to have or they're popular.
The pets they have there are very similar to the ones they have here. Like everyone has dogs and cats are very popular. I would say I've seen like people have birds there, like parrots, like almost more than they have here.
Yeah.
And then like people on farms, like people in rural communities, they have farms. And those are way more common than they are here. And when you're on a farm, you can have a lot of animals, like just like typical farm animals you'd see.
Someone said, do you celebrate Santa Claus? So someone mentioned if there's the prevalence of Santa Claus, and this kind of goes back to maybe the prevalence of Catholicism in Colombia. Santa Claus isn't really that big of a concept, but a lot of people get their gifts from the baby Jesus. And so that's something that may be a little bit different than you see here. And it's a very big religious ceremony. So the 9 days before Christmas, there's something called the novena, which everyone usually does with their family, and they get around and pray and read different stories and kind of sing songs and things like that. And so those are the 9 days before Christmas. And that's also kind of going back to the role of religion and the way people celebrate holidays and things like that.
Yeah. People actually open the presents usually like on the 24th, Christmas Eve at night, rather than Christmas morning like we do here. So I know when I'm with my family, like everyone else usually opens it the night before, and I'm the one that like waits till Christmas morning, which is pretty interesting. Someone asked, is TV in Colombia similar to American TV? And I would say, yeah, like now that technology is kind of evolving, like you can kind of see like they watch some of our shows, and they definitely have like a lot of similar, like they definitely have like reality shows and like soap operas, and they have like singing competitions and stuff like that. So I'd say they have very similar television. They do have like the news, like journalism. Colombia is just like journalism here. They have local and national news, so people get their news from the TV in similar ways that we do. But I guess TV is definitely more accessible in like urban areas and in big cities than in rural communities. That's where you kind of are limited with what you get.
Someone mentioned a question about weather. And so technically it's pretty much in the capital, it's pretty much the same temperature year round. It's between like 50 and 65 degrees, and it's always pretty cloudy. There's not really a lot of, I don't think it's snowed there for a long time. So snow definitely isn't something there, but if you're in the capital, you can kind of see it's kind of sunken in, and there's mountains all around. And so that sometimes affects people who aren't maybe used to those kinds of altitudes and things like that once you first get there. But it's something that you get used to very quickly.
Cool. So someone asked, what are the parties in their government? So I have a list. I'll just read them out because you guys might be interested to hear some of the names. So like we have the Democratic and Republican Party. They have the Colombian Liberal Party. They have the Social Party of National Unity. They have the Colombian Conservative Party. They have the Democratic Center. They have the Green Party, which is something we have here. They have the National Integration Party. And those are like the biggest ones, but then you'll see like a lot of like smaller ones. And I guess Colombia's like a lot more countries around the world that have more than just two parties. So that's always something to keep in mind.
It's about technology. So.
Technology. They have American Idol.
Yeah. So I guess with technology, from my experiences there, it's kind of like we've been saying, like urban big cities definitely have more access to technology. When I went, it was very like, I guess, like people who had money were the ones that had like cars or like more than one car and like had iPhones and stuff. So in the big cities, if you have enough money, you can definitely have like all the technology we have here. But in rural communities, like I guess like cell phones are like a lot. They're not going to be iPhones. They're going to be much older cell phones. There's going to be a lot less like tablets and stuff everywhere. And technology is really going to vary based on where you are. So I would say in like the most developed and urban, like big city areas, it's going to like be like you're in America. But then when you go to rural communities, you might be really hard pressed to find like advanced technology.
People asked if you celebrate Halloween and what are some of the other big holidays that you celebrated?
So with Halloween, it's not celebrated like a national thing like it is here. Like I would say here, like it's like a national holiday. Everyone celebrates Halloween. People definitely celebrate it there, but like to a much smaller degree. I know in the capital, Bogota, they have like that's I guess the biggest place where they celebrate it, and they have like a festival and stuff, but it's definitely like not a national holiday. It's definitely less important than other holidays there. And then some other holidays they celebrate are obviously like Christmas, Navidad. They celebrate Colombian Independence Day. It's a big holiday for them. What else?
Let's see. No.
I think Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's a big
Easter's
one.
a big one because of Catholicism, of course. Like we said earlier, different like smaller communities celebrate like holy days and have holidays just for their patron saints or like something for their community. So even though there's not as many like I guess national holidays, if you go to different like areas, you can find like different celebrations for different things that unite the community, like patron saints.
So just looking at a list of some national holidays, like June 6th is the national holiday for Sacred Heart, and then on August 15th is the national holiday for the Assumption of Mary, which we might commonly not maybe see here, but there you'd usually probably get the day off from school to go to church and be able to celebrate that with your family and friends. Well.
They don't celebrate Thanksgiving because that's a very American holiday. It's like the Pilgrims and the settlers and like the Native Americans. So that like doesn't apply to like Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Some questions about things like Pokemon Go, Minecraft, Walmart. Do they have things like
so they don't have Walmart. I'm sure some of like the most advanced kids have Minecraft there, but Minecraft's not going to be as popular there. I don't actually know how they did with Pokemon Go. I'm sure the people
I think it probably got around there.
Yeah, I'm sure people when it was really big, I'm sure a lot of people were playing Pokemon
and just
Go
like
down there.
Other parts of the world, there's some American chains that are big there. So I don't know if you caught it in the intro video, but there was a big ad for Papa John's in the back, and different other restaurants like that. Like there's McDonald's and things like that over there.
Starbucks is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Burger King, like fast food places are really big. Someone asked if they have a KFC, and like I can't say whether they do, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was probably at least.
And then they have a lot of Colombian like fast food chains. Like there's one called El Corral, which is a really good like hamburger chain that you can see almost everywhere. It's like if you could walk like 5 minutes, you'd probably find one somewhere. So that's a really big restaurant that they have.
They don't celebrate Mardi Gras because that's again I feel like
it's mostly
that's very like New Orleans, like very, very like that region. So like that's why they're not going to celebrate it. What are the questions? So someone asked if they have a lot of big name stores in the US or more small family owned stores. And that's really going to vary based on the region. Like if you go to smaller communities, like there's definitely like the way a lot of smaller communities are kind of laid out is like there's like a center square and then like a lot of like stores and stuff kind of around the main square, and those are all going to be like owned by families and like individual business owners. But then when you go to the cities, there's going to be malls, and like I don't think they have like a Walmart or anything, but you can see department stores and you can see like bigger things depending on where you go. So but I would say there's definitely way more family owned smaller stores than like big chains.
Did you guys institute students wear uniforms to school?
If it's in Catholic schools, most likely they're going to wear uniforms. But I don't think if it's one of the public schools that they wear uniforms. Yeah, but definitely for Catholic school. Yeah.
And again, that's probably based on the region. Rural communities and smaller areas, probably more traditional. But then in cities, I'm sure people can wear what they want. And once you get to high school and college, you can probably wear what you want.
Do they have a Disney World?
Do they have a Disney World? Ooh.
So there is a place that I went to when I was little called something happened. Called Diversity, which is in one of the big malls in Colombia, and it's kind of like a whole town, but it's for kids up until the age of like 12 or 15, I think. And so there's different things, like they have like a bank and like a grocery store and things like that. So it's kind of, you can like practice being an adult, but without all the pressures that come with that, unfortunately.
The U.S. has a similar amusement park. I don't know if anyone ever's been. It's called Wanadu City in Florida, very similar to that. When I went to an amusement park. Forget what it was called, but it was an amusement park like based around like coffee. So I forget where it was, but like basically they have a bunch of like standard rides. They have like a water park area and roller coasters and stuff. But then they also have like shows and like cultural presentations and like a museum where you learn about like how coffee is made and the role of coffee in Colombia. So it's really cool to see an amusement park with like a theme kind of like that, where you're like learning, but it's also definitely an amusement park.
Maybe one more, and then you guys can wrap it up. Someone asked about running water or different languages that might be spoken.
So someone asked about running water, and definitely in the big cities, you definitely see that. I mean, lots of apartments are very modern, with lots of amenities, similar to what you would find here. But I think it depends. Once you go into the more rural areas, it may be a little more less modern than what we're used to now. But I think most parts definitely still have running water as well. Is that it?
And last thing, I'm sure they play FIFA of sorts. Like the people that have gaming systems, I'm sure they play FIFA. But
Indeed.
Thanks for your questions, guys.
Yes, thank you.
So we hope you guys learned a lot about Colombia and about the role of religion there, and a lot of other things that you guys have asked us. We hope you'll take the initiative and learn more about Colombia and other countries.
Maybe go visit one day.
Yeah, great place. We recommend it. And thank you guys for participating in our presentation.
Do we end it?